A 40-year-old who looks incredibly physically fit could actually have the brain of an 80-year-old. Why? Because grinding for 18 hours a day is actually a trap if you ignore this one specific biological trait.
Yeah, we tend to view sleep as just this passive state, right? Like you just power down.
Exactly. But if you're obsessed with the why behind human performance, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe and turn on that bell to join us. We drop deep dives like this every week to help you outsmart the average. Now, let's get into the data.
Most people think hard work is the answer to everything. It's really not. Today we're breaking down the literal biology of deep sleep and why your brain might actually be your own worst enemy if you're skipping it.
Because everyone right now is trying to hack their biology, You go online and people are plunging into 5 a.m. ice baths, tracking every single macronutrient, or dropping thousands of dollars on wearable tech.
Oh yeah, just swallowing handfuls of nootropics to scrape together a 1% edge.
Right. We're completely obsessed with optimization, but we're entirely ignoring the most powerful, totally free, smart drug available to us. We treat the single most critical maintenance process our bodies do like it's like an annoying scheduling conflict.
Which is crazy, because neurology paints a totally different picture. The assumption is that the brain powers down like a laptop to save battery. But your brain actually becomes far more active when you lose consciousness.
Just shifts its focus.
Exactly. It shifts from external processing to internal, structural, janitorial work. And failing to initiate that doesn't just make you groggy. It fundamentally degrades the physical architecture of your mind.
Janitorial work. I love that phrasing. So for anyone listening who still thinks of sleep as just getting some rest, we're going to unpack the literal mechanical reality of what happens inside your skull when the lights go out. We're focusing heavily on stage 3 non-REM sleep.
Right, which scientists refer to as deep sleep.
And just to clarify, this isn't the phase where we're having those super vivid dreams, is it?
No, not at all. It's a much more profound state of unconsciousness. If you look at an EEG of a waking brain, the electrical activity is chaotic and dense.
Because it's processing a million inputs a second.
Yeah, it's frantic.
Yeah.
But when you descend into stage 3, that chaotic static is replaced by incredibly slow, synchronized rhythmic pulses. We call them delta waves.
Huh. So your brain basically creates a biological firewall against the outside world.
Pretty much. Your heart rate drops, your breathing slows way down, and you become very difficult to wake up.
So during this firewall state, how is the brain actually managing its waste? Because I know the rest of the body relies on the lymphatic system, that vast network of vessels that sweeps away cellular garbage.
Right, the immune debris. But the brain doesn't have conventional lymphatic vessels. It's completely walled off by the blood-brain barrier.
Which is wild because the brain burns an astronomical amount of energy. It makes massive amounts of metabolic byproducts every single day. So how is it not just drowning in its own toxicity?
For decades, that was actually one of the biggest mysteries in neuroscience. We knew the brain produced waste, but we literally couldn't find the plumbing.
Wait, really? We just couldn't find it?
Nope. But it turns out the brain has a custom-built hidden infrastructure called the glymphatic system. It's managed by glial cells, which are just the support cells surrounding your neurons.
Okay, so what do these glial cells actually do?
Well, during waking hours, they're mostly inactive. But the moment you enter those slow-wave delta pulses of deep sleep, a mechanical transformation occurs. The glial cells actually shrink.
Wait, they physically change size?
They do. The interstitial space, which is the gaps between your brain cells, it expands by up to 60%.
Wow, 60% is huge.
It's massive. The brain literally opens up wider channels within its own tissue to allow cerebrospinal fluid to rush in.
So it's basically flooding the brain.
Exactly. With the channels widened, this fluid sweeps rapidly through the tissue, pulling away all that accumulated metabolic waste from the day. It is literally a high-pressure biological car wash happening inside your head.
That is insane. I like to think of your brain like a massive commercial kitchen.
Yeah.
Every day you're cooking this highly complex, chaotic meal that's you working, navigating relationships, solving problems.
Right, creating a ton of mess.
Yeah. Now imagine cooking a massive banquet in that kitchen every single day, but you never do the dishes, you never wipe down the counters, you never take out the trash.
The first day you skip cleaning, it's just a minor annoyance. You have to move a dirty pan to find space on the cutting board.
But over time, the grease just builds up. The garbage bags pile up in the corner.
And eventually, The debris is stacked so high you literally cannot reach the stoves. You can no longer function in that kitchen.
And the specific garbage accumulating in the brain isn't just generic fatigue, right? It's a very specific sticky protein called beta-amyloid.
Exactly. And beta-amyloid is a perfectly natural byproduct of neurons firing. Your brain is active, it generates this protein.
But isn't that the exact same protein associated with severe cognitive decline?
Yes. It is the primary component of Alzheimer's plaques. So the glymphatic system's main job during that nightly car wash is to flush that beta-amyloid out before it can cause trouble.
So if you consistently cut your deep sleep short, the fluid doesn't get the chance to wash the tissue.
Right. The beta-amyloid is left behind, and because it's sticky, it clumps together into dense plaques.
If the consequences of missing this biological car wash are so catastrophic, like literally the difference between healthy aging and neurological decay, why are we all collectively bragging about functioning on 4 hours of sleep?
Because we've normalized chronic neurological damage and rebranded it as hustle.
It's so true. I mean, you look at corporate cultures in places like New York or Kuala Lumpur. Surviving on minimal sleep and iced coffee isn't just common, it's actively rewarded.
It's worn as a badge of honor. But the whole premise of that hustle culture rests on a fatal misunderstanding, the myth of sleep debt repayment.
Oh, where people think they can just redline their brain Monday to Friday and then magically clear the ledger by sleeping 10 hours on Saturday.
Which doesn't work. By the time Friday rolls around, the neuronal damage from that toxic stress is already done.
Because you can't retroactively unclump a toxic protein.
You cannot. The beta-amyloid has already formed those insoluble aggregates. Sleeping in on the weekend might make you feel physically less exhausted, but it does absolutely nothing to reverse the structural cellular damage.
I really want to talk about the immediate fallout of that damage too, because it's not just a problem for our 70-year-old selves. When I pull a late-night editing session and I'm running on 4 hours of sleep, I inevitably find myself staring into the fridge at 2 a.m., desperately looking for a sugary snack.
Yeah, your entire mood and focus are just completely hijacked.
Why does that happen so fast?
You're experiencing a biochemical crisis. When you're deprived of stage 3 deep sleep, your baseline brain chemistry is depleted. The reward centers of your brain become starved for dopamine.
So my brain just recognizes it lacks energy and triggers intense cravings for the fastest source available.
Right? Simple carbs and sugar. You eat the sugar, you get a rapid glucose spike, followed by a steep crash, which then triggers the dopamine craving all over again.
So you're just locked in a physiological loop of terrible decision-making. And it feels like my thoughts are racing, but not productively. It's just anxious noise.
I think this source mentioned the default mode network playing a role here.
Yeah, the DMN. It's a network of interacting brain regions that's highly active when you're daydreaming or ruminating. In a well-rested brain, it's carefully regulated. You dip into it for creativity, then snap out of it.
But in a sleep-deprived brain,
it goes completely haywire, becomes hyperactive and unregulated.
Which perfectly explains that feeling of trying to read an important email, but your brain keeps dragging you back to, like, an embarrassing thing you said 5 years ago.
Or vague anxiety about next month's rent.
Yeah.
The reason it spirals out of control is tied to the impairment of your prefrontal cortex.
The CEO of your brain, right? Sitting right behind the forehead. Exactly. It's responsible for executive function, complex problem solving, and top-down emotional regulation. It is the neurological brake pedal.
So it stops you from snapping at a coworker, stops you from eating the donut, and forces you to focus. So when you skip deep sleep, the CEO basically takes the day off.
And leaves the most primitive, impulsive parts of the brain in charge of the company.
Which makes me seriously question the trade-offs we're making every day. Are we literally sabotaging our long-term cognitive health just to cross one extra thing off our to-do list today?
The math simply does not work in favor of the hustle mindset. The people playing the highest stakes games in the world, elite athletes, top-tier CEOs, they've already figured this out. They've shifted toward a longevity mindset.
Because they understand the concept of cognitive reserve.
Exactly. Every time you achieve a full cycle of deep sleep, you clear out those toxins and reinforce neural pathways. You build up your cognitive reserve.
You're creating a structurally denser, more resilient brain.
Right. When you skip it, that reserve physically shrinks. You're operating on a razor-thin margin of error. A tired brain makes incredibly expensive mistakes.
Okay, the stakes are undeniably massive. We need the car wash, we need the CEO at the wheel, and we can't catch up on weekends. So how do we actually force this process to happen? We can't just close our eyes and command delta waves.
We have to set the biological stage, and the most powerful environmental lever we have is temperature. Your circadian rhythm is deeply intertwined with thermal regulation.
So we have to get cold.
Your core body temperature must drop by about 1 to 2 degrees Celsius. If your core is too warm, your brain physically resists entering stage 3.
But that brings up a fascinating paradox. People always say to take a warm bath before bed. Wouldn't that heat up the core?
It sounds counterintuitive, but think about the cardiovascular mechanics. Submerging in warm water triggers widespread vasodilation.
The blood vessels near the skin expand.
Dramatically. This draws blood away from your internal organs and pushes it out to your extremities and skin surface.
Oh, so you're basically moving the heat from your core to the surface.
Exactly. Then you step out of the warm bath into a cool room, and all that blood rapidly dumps its heat into the surrounding air.
Which causes the internal core temperature to plummet.
Perfectly and rapidly. That sharp drop is a powerful biological signal to your brain that it's time to deploy the slow-wave sleep architecture.
That is brilliant. Okay, so we have the Insight Lab protocol for this, which we call the 3-2-1 rule. It's a mental check you can use tomorrow to guarantee you hit that state.
Yeah, it's a systematic protocol for shutting down the nervous system. 3 hours before bed, no food.
Which loops right back to the temperature thing, right? Digestion is super energy intensive.
Right. Your stomach is churning, liver is processing, pancreas is pumping insulin. That metabolic friction generates internal heat. You're trying to cool the engine while actively throwing coal into the furnace.
Okay, then 2 hours before bed, no work. And this is all about hormones.
Managing cortisol, specifically. The primary stress hormone. It's an alarm bell. If you're firing off stressful emails right before bed, your blood is flooded with cortisol.
And high cortisol chemically blocks the brain from entering low-frequency brainwave states.
You simply cannot achieve stage 3 sleep while flooded with stress hormones.
Which brings us to the final step. 1 hour before bed. 0 screens. Phones, laptops, TV, all of it. People hate this rule because we use scrolling to numb out, but the biochemistry is brutal.
It's the specific wavelength of blue light. Evolutionarily, we were only exposed to that spectrum during the middle of the day under a blazing sun.
So staring at our phones at 11 p.m. is like firing the midday sun directly into our retinas.
Exactly. The photoreceptors catch it, signal the pineal gland, and immediately halt the production of melatonin.
And melatonin is the trigger for sleep, so you're chemically tricking your brain into believing it's high noon in the Sahara.
It halts the entire descent into sleep.
I think of the 3-2-1 rule like a commercial flight descending. You're at cruising altitude, going 500 miles an hour. You don't just point the nose down and drop onto the runway in 10 seconds.
The structural integrity of the plane would fail.
Right. You need a gradual descent. Pull back the throttle, lower altitude, deploy flaps. The 3-2-1 rule is your brain's descent protocol. Stop the heat of digestion. Stop the cortisol spike. Stop the artificial sun.
If you skip it, you're just trying to crash land your brain every night.
And wondering why you feel destroyed the next day. There's a quote from the source. Genetics loads the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. Deep sleep is our ultimate biological insurance policy.
It really is. Trading that process away for perceived productivity is just a catastrophic bargain.
I want to leave everyone listening with a final thought to mull over. We think of our patience, our creativity, our general mood. We think of those things as our core personality, our fixed identity.
But if deep sleep literally changes the physical space between our brain cells to clear out toxic debris,
we have to ask a deeply uncomfortable question. How much of our core personality on any given day is actually just a reflection of how effectively we washed our brain the night before?
you aren't just resting, you are literally preserving the physical structure of who you are.
So do yourself and your future brain a massive favor. Test out the 3-2-1 rule tonight. But if you realize your sleep debt is actually a trap, you're only halfway there, because the way you wake up determines if you can use that rested brain at all.
Watch our breakdown on the billionaire sleep myth right here to complete the puzzle. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.